Bush43 reporting here at YouTube. I thought I would do, this is a historical video about Republican presidents, recent Republican presidents, and that's a picture of Richard Nixon and a young Don Rumsfeld. I don't hardly recognize him without his glasses there. Boy, he must have been, well, young, very young. And with Richard Nixon. Now, Rumsfeld was in the Nixon administration. Now, I'm going to go through each Republican presidents and do a kind of a brief critique, because let me tell you, I'm looking at the recent Republican presidents now, and man, they all have sucked. Oh, I hate to be so... okay, well, now Richard Nixon, and I have to say that the party... the Republican Party with Richard Nixon really started to swing to the right. Okay, you still around that time, 60s and 70s, you still had some. Oh, there's Rumsfeld again with Henry Doc Kissinger, National Security, and then he was Secretary of State with Richard Milhouse Nixon. Now you know the story of Richard Nixon. Well, he prolonged the Vietnam War another 4 years. And then, of course, see, that's the Watergate. See this? See, he's spying there in the Watergate. And what Richard Nixon tried to do is he tried to rig the 1972, the wacko Nixon people. They tried to rig the 1972 election. Actually, they did a very good job. They were very well into their plan of rigging the election, and they got caught. The burglars got caught in the Watergate. Oh, listen, if you want to laugh, if you want to think about how bizarre American politics are and how wacko some people can get, and particularly on the right wing wackos, they went in and bugged the Democratic National headquarters in 1972 in the summer. The Republican, and they were paid by the Republican Party, or they were paid by the Nixon's committee to re-elect a president. Okay, so that ends up, see, there's Nixon going by. Nixon gets impeached. Okay, he's breaking laws right and left. There's another. Okay, now Nixon is gone. Gerald Ford comes in sort of to clean up the god-awful mess that Nixon leaves. But that provides an opening for who? On the left, Don Rumsfeld, and on the right there, young Dick Cheney and a young Don Rumsfeld in the Ford administration. And you can see those two, Don Rumsfeld and Cheney, get their big break during the Nixon and Ford administration. And actually, Cheney learns a heck of a... Oh, does Cheney learn a lot from Richard Nixon? And he repeats it in this latest Bush administration. See how this history is somewhat relevant. Now, okay, so you got crummy Nixon, and then you get a Democrat in there after Ford, you get Carter, and of course Ronald Magnus takes out. Now Ronald Magnus, to me, well, if you want to talk about shills, Ronald Magnus is a shill for business. Let's be up front. Ronald Magnus Reagan is a shill for business interests. And listen, he was on the business payroll for, you can see there, he was campaigning against socialized medicine and helping out the tobacco companies. And whoever would line his pockets, he would speak for. Oh, and he was super anti-communist, of course. But he was pro-business, just pro-business and get government out of the way. Because government sucks, more or less. Government sucks. So the Reaganauts come in, and the Reaganauts are, I think, much like the Bush people. They wanted to come in and destroy. Oh, like Vishnu, they wanted to destroy the government, and actually, they did. They did a lot of good initial work on destroying much of the government, and Ronald Magnus did such budget deficit spending that he's put the country. We are still in the red because of Ronald Magnus. We have never paid off the debt accumulated by Ronald Magnus, and Ronald Magnus did what we call triple down economics, which is give tax cuts to the rich, and the rich will be so benevolent they will trickle their money down to us poor people. Us poor people on YouTube, right? All of us are poor on YouTube, right? Pretty much. Now, here's a picture of who Ron Paul, the prophet, the seer, what else? The great, the shaman. Yes, Ron Paul. Ron Paul was a Reaganaut, of course. He was a Reaganaut. Now, so Ron Paul doesn't always get it right. He doesn't always get it right. So he could be wrong about the Fed. Oh, so here he could be wrong about the Fed. He could be wrong about the gold standard. He could be wrong about a lot of things. But here is this duo, Cheney and Rumsfeld. They resurface after how many years? 20 years? Yeah, 20 years. They're in Cheney was in the Reaganite. Or no. Cheney was in Bush 41. So he was still hanging around. They pulled him out, but Colin Powell kept him at bay, and the other smart people around. Actually, there were some smart people around Bush 1. So let's recap now. Nixon sucked, was awful, was impeached, or started to be impeached and resigned from office. Then you get Ronald Magnus, who starts destroying the government and destroying the country and destroying unions and destroying public education and turning the keys of the government over to the big business. And they start bilking and ripping off the taxpayer and destroying things, and the rich get rich and the poor get poor, etc. And, okay, so that's Ronald Magnus, who the Republicans still like at this point. I think they're going to reassess now Ronald Magnus's big deficit spending and his adventures abroad. Blah blah blah. So you got Nixon sucked, Reagan sucked, Bush 41 wasn't too bad, but he was only in there for one term. And then of course you got George W. And the Nixon graduates from the Nixon School of Government. That's Rumsfeld and Cheney. So my question really is, do the Republicans have a decent president that they can point to between Nixon and Bush 43? Now, the least destructive president was Bush 41, not Bush the Elder. And he didn't whack. He had to raise taxes a little bit. He didn't get into really stupid wars. But the others, Ronald Magnus was sending troops. He sent troops to Grenada. He sent troops to Panama, didn't he? They sent troops to Lebanon. We were helping the Contras. Ronald Magnus was an interventionist of the. We were mucking around in South Africa. It goes on and on and on. So, for people, I recommend you look back at the history and see the Republican presidents have been surprisingly and consistently awful. And boy, maybe the Republican Party got to think about change. Change. You guys got to get a new philosophy, a new game plan. Okay.